Hey, we're getting ready to watch William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. This is the Baz Luhrmann version, and Damian's never seen this before, but he's a big Leo fan, and I told him he really should see it.
In the spirit of Valentine's Day, let's see if I love Romeo and Juliet.
Welcome to the Damian and Devlin Show, and this is our review for William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, directed by Baz Luhrmann, starring Leonardo Dicaprio, Claire Danes, John Leguizamo, Paul Rudd, and Peter Postlethwaite. And this is a movie that I remember seeing in theaters. You would have been probably a little...
5 years old.
Yeah, you'd have been a little boy when this came out. And I remember when I saw it, this movie actually was really big. Like, this was huge. It became, like, teen girls were obsessed with this movie. And not just because of Leo. It's just, this has so much that it's kind of like a kind of like a teenage girl's dream in some ways. It's like an emo dream, you know, loyalty and sacrificing and intense love. And it actually not only got girls and young, I'm sure young men liked it too, but it got them actually going out and reading the original Shakespeare and stuff. It was that big that it made William Shakespeare was cool again with young people. And, you know, this is around the time with Beverly Hills 90210 and stuff. But I wanted you to know just how big this movie was. And I told you, I think a lot of this contributed to a lot of the young girls going to see Titanic a year later, because he had gained this, and then by that time it was out on video. But I just want you to know that this was a huge movie.
Well, I was a little bit too young to experience it. Like I said, I was only 5 years old, but I'd heard about it. I've heard about it a lot. And I've always wanted to see it, basically because of Leonardo Dicaprio. Now that I've seen it, I have a lot of thoughts on it. I have seen another of Baz Luhrmann's, what did you call it? The Red
Curtain Trilogy.
The Red Curtain Trilogy. I've seen Moulin Rouge, and I have my thoughts about that one as well.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to do a review for that one, but if he can sit through it again, I'd love to do one years from now.
You might have to pay me to sit through it again.
Yeah, because he did not have a good experience with it. The Red Curtain Trilogy is the three earliest films of Baz Luhrmann: Strictly Ballroom, Romeo and Juliet, and Moulin Rouge. The only thing that really links them is that there are some similarities, but they're three very different movies, but they all have red curtains in them. This one didn't have that many red curtains, but it did have some things that have similar aspects. So I'm interested to see, because he had a really bad reaction to Moulin Rouge, so I'm interested to see, but we will get to that in a minute. For those of you who don't know William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, it's about two star-crossed lovers who come...
You said Julia.
Julia, oh yeah. Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, it's basically the love story of two kids from rival families. In this one, they're gangster families. We don't know exactly what kind of gangsters. It was just regular gangsters. But anyhow, they're rival families, and of course, their only kids fall in love with one another. And they're hoping that their love will bring the families together, but, well, spoiler alert, it doesn't. In fact, it makes things really bad. And I feel weird because it's been around for centuries.
Hundreds of years.
So, but I still am going to try not to spoil the movie. But anyhow, do you want to give your first initial feelings?
Yeah,
sure.
After seeing Moulin Rouge, I kind of had a feeling of how this movie was going to be filmed, and I was right. It's exactly the same kind of quirkiness and out there cinematography. And while I like it at times, I don't like it at others, and I'll get into that when I go into my positives and negatives. Overall, I'm mixed on the movie. I'm not going to say I loved it. I'm not going to say I hated it. I am okay with it. Huh? It had its ups and its downs. I know you like this movie a lot.
I do.
What are some of your positives about it?
As I said, it's out of the three Red Curtain, this is my lowest. I love Strictly Ballroom and Moulin Rouge. They're both almost perfect movies to me. But this one I do have issues with. My favorite is I love early Baz Luhrmann, and I know he's not for everyone, and I respect that. But what I like about him is he definitely has his own style, and when you watch those 3 movies, you can say that's a Baz Luhrmann movie. He has changed that style up a bit. You see it a little bit in some of his movies like The Great Gatsby, but it's not anywhere like this. Not to mention, Moulin Rouge does play a lot more for comedic. This does too, but not as much. But one of my positives in this is Baz Luhrmann. One of my favorite things that he does in this particular movie is that the movie is crazy and bug nuts to see. The imagery is in your face. Still not as in your face as Moulin Rouge. I think Moulin Rouge, he just went overdrive. But this one, what I love is that whenever Romeo and Juliet hit the screen, he slows it right down. And that's why I think the romance kind of works in this, because you got to remember, I was telling Damian, the reason why this movie works in some ways, not works, that's not the right thing, but the way the story is, they are very young in the original play. They're like 15, 16. So when people say it's so unrealistic that they're so intensely in love, I get that, because when you were a teenager, everything was like almost the end of the world. And so when you meet that person that you fall in love with, I totally buy that these two fall in love with each other with looking at each other. Yeah. The visual, Boz, I love the production value in this. He finds the weirdest things. On the beach, the fact that he had this burnt out, I want to say it was an old theater.
It looks like an old theater, yeah.
And it's just a beautiful piece that you can tell he thinks it's beautiful, because it looks like it's almost bombed out or something, because there's a big hole in it. But it makes a nice little thing when they go to the beach and you can look at the beach, but it looks like you're watching a movie at the beach. It's really bizarre. But again, he does have his over-the-topness. I love the, masquerade ball. He loves that. My favorite scene is when they first see each other behind an aquarium. Thank you. I can't think of the words.
It's okay. You're just so excited and gushing.
I am about that scene, because I think it's a beautiful scene, because neither of them see it coming. And to see somebody with the fish floating, it's probably the most iconic scene. I also like that everything is stripped down when Romeo and Juliet comes out. Everything at the masquerade ball is over the top. Like the costumes are just glitter and everything. Romeo is wearing a simple chainmail with a couple of pieces of metal. Juliet's in a white dress with angel wings. So I think he planned that every time Romeo and Juliet are on the screen, this crazy world, and it is a crazy world, because it is. So enough about Boz, but what I like that he took a chance on is he actually keeps pretty close to the actual William Shakespeare script, which has its pluses and its negatives. I'll get to the negatives later. But what I like is that he actually didn't try to update the dialogue. And a lot of times, and that is hard for me to understand sometimes, and it was tough the first time I saw it, because I'm like, I'm having troubles.
So that's how I felt going into it. And if you've never seen this movie, you'll experience the same thing too. The very first scene is kind of like a gang shootout at a gas station, except they're all speaking Old English to each other. And I was kind of taken aback by that. And I found I've noticed it got better throughout the movie as the movie progressed. I kind of guessed I got into it a little bit more and was starting to get the quirks and nuances of Old English. But the first half of the movie is ridiculous to try to keep track of unless you're used to reading that or hearing that. I had no idea what some of the characters were saying or trying to convey half the time.
Yeah, and I will say that we are on the same note on that, because when I saw this first in theaters, that opening scene where everything, you got to remember, everything's modernized in this. Yep. The cars, there's cars.
Instead of swords, they use guns. And it says what kind of a sword it is, like John Leguizamo's character has sword on it, and then later on there's another character that pulls out a handgun, but it says dagger on it, and these are supposed to be the stand-ins for how William Shakespeare originally wrote the play.
Yeah, instead of swords, and so it's all modernized. I was saying to Damian while we were watching it, one of the things I do enjoy about this movie is I don't know when it takes place, because it's like some future world. Like, it looks like it's present day, but the way they're whipping guns, like they go to a party and they leave their guns at the gun check rack. And this happens more than once. Like, they go to a pool hall and, yeah, leave your guns. And almost thought, like, wow, like, is this what the future of the U.S. is going to be like? I'll say the U.S. because I don't know if we're close to that in Canada.
No, definitely
so
not.
there's kind of a dreamy state that does. But I like that he actually decided to keep the actual thing, because even though I did have problems, you know, at the beginning he's like, oh, do you suck your thumb, all this weird stuff, and they're still like in Miami, you know, they're in like
the Hawaiian shirts, bare chested,
yeah, and it's almost obnoxious when you first see it. Like, I want to leave, and then I'm glad I stick with it. But it's a daring move, and I think it's a good one, even though it did piss me off. Like, when I first saw it, I was like, I'm not going to get through this. And then as I did, yeah. So we had the exact same first time experience for that.
And I'm going to go with you on this. Yeah. As much as it threw me off and I didn't like it, like I said, sticking through with it, eventually I managed to overcome the hurdle of Old English, and I kind of got the gist. Having knowledge of what Romeo and Juliet is about beforehand helped a lot, but I'm not saying it's necessarily a negative. I think it's a brave step for Baz Luhrmann to not change the dialogue, because it's a negative to me, but it's also a positive to me, because I appreciate the boldness of it. It just takes some getting used to. That's all I'm going to say about that.
So if you are watching this for your first time, stay with it, even though that first scene is very jarring. Not to mention the action sequence is very jarring too, because I don't think it was that action-packed in the stage play.
I've never seen the stage play. I've read the play. I'm sure most of us have, because we've all been through high school, and they make you read that sort of thing. But yeah, it's hard to grasp. One of the biggest problems I had with it were some of the characters. Sorry, not some of the characters. Some of the actors were really good at delivering those lines. Yeah. Leo, for example, Claire Danes, awesome with it. But then there are just some side characters that I'm just. It's like they didn't fully understand what they were saying themselves. Like Leonardo Dicaprio's cousin in the movie. I can't remember the actor that plays him, but I know I've seen him in a lot of other movies. It just sounded like he was reading the script. He didn't understand or believe in what he was saying. John Leguizamo had his moments where I could believe that what his character was saying was what he believed.
He was still very over the top.
Yeah.
Like he's like, I'm doing shit. Like it fit his character very well, but he almost came off like...
And that ties in with my whole mixed feelings of this. Like, some of the performances were wonderful.
Peter Postlethwaite.
Awesome.
I told him, if they did this actually like authentic in the time of Romeo and Juliet, they could have had that same actor play the character.
Absolutely. So some of the performances as well, good. Some of them, not so good. It's all mixed. And I'll move on to the soundtrack as well. Some are good, some are not. Yeah. This movie literally treads the line of being absolutely good and absolutely horrible. It's right down the middle. And I don't think I've ever seen a movie that just narrowly walks that path. Because normally I pick a side. It's good, it's bad. It's good, it's bad. This one, I can't decide. The soundtrack has some good hits from the mid-90s, like love me, say that you love me. I like that song. It's a hit. And then I'll hear some just random guitar while Leo's out in the desert playing baseball with himself, apparently, and he doesn't even notice a postal worker twice right there to give him an urgent letter. And it's like, bow, 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 bow. And it's just bad. So again, it's mixed.
Yeah, you talk about movies that, you know, their audiences are mixed. You know, some love it, some hate it. I can see why Baz sometimes gets you to that point. Like, I think repeat viewing has helped me a lot with this movie, though I did love it the first time I saw it. But as I said, there were moments where I was like, yeah, I can't do this. And then you give it a chance. My other last positive is the performances. And since you touched on them, yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio is great. He was still young at his time, but he had already given us like Gilbert Grape.
What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
And he'd already proven that he is going to be someone to watch. And it's interesting to watch this now when you know how great an actor he became, because he shows it in this movie. There is a scene where he shoots someone, and the rage in his face, where you see the tears welling up in his eyes, you know there's no glycerin there. That's all Leo, and it's just powerful. And Claire Danes, you know, another amazing actress. And as I said, Peter Postlethwaite was my favorite. Some of the ones, I won't call names out because I can't remember the actors' names, but it was very interesting that they cast people with thick accents. I think the nurse kind of had a Spanish accent.
Yeah, she did.
And to see her at moments, and I'm not saying she was horrible, but seeing her through moments trying to get through some of the English dialect was kind of almost humorous, because you could hear the Latino coming out in her. And the same with Juliet's dad, who has like a very Italian. There's a scene where he has a rage, and there's moments where you're like, yeah, it doesn't really work with a Bronx accent and stuff like that.
Totally doesn't.
So do you want to go into more of your negatives that you kind of get the most of?
See, the thing is, I enjoy what Baz Luhrmann tries to do with how he films these movies. And I've only ever seen Moulin Rouge besides this one, but some of the way he films things are really excellent. For example, using the scenery of the theater to film the beach and whatnot. And it's beautiful, it's stunning. And some of his set pieces are wonderful, like the whole masquerade party. I really enjoyed that part. And it likens me to that masquerade party in Moulin Rouge right at the beginning there.
Yeah, were they?
It was a lot of fun, and it just seemed like everybody there was also having a lot of fun. But then there'll be random moments where we're having a serious conversation between Juliet and her mom, and the camera speeds up to show the mom leaving the room, but then slows down again. And there'll be random slow motion scenes where you're asking yourself, why? Why are we speeding up? Why are we on slow motion? It's very jarring, and thinking about it and the way that I've seen movies, it makes me think, like, am I supposed to be part of the audience? Because Leo is shown taking a drug, which I believe is either LSD or acid or maybe even ecstasy. They don't really say what kind of drug it is, but it makes me wonder if he filmed it in that way to make you feel like you're possibly on drugs with him. But it just doesn't work for me. It's very aggravating, especially when I'm really getting into an emotional scene and then suddenly I'm sped up.
It's like the beach. Leo does those movies.
But then suddenly I'm just really slow for no reason. It's just bad. And
yeah, the comedy, for me, the comedy works better in Moulin Rouge because they use it more. But in this, it actually does feel forced because there is so much seriousness in this movie.
It does. Romeo and Juliet is not a comedy. It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of serious moments in this, but again, it just feels like the comedy aspects and the way that the movie is filmed feels shoehorned in there. Like, you should be laughing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does feel forced. Where I thought it flowed better in Moulin Rouge. I know you probably didn't think so, but this one, it does feel like it's stuck in there.
And I don't want to say that he's a bad director, because he's not. Like I said, I appreciate that he took chances. It's just these chances didn't work.
I'd like to let you see stuff like Australia or stuff where he starts getting a little more focused.
I mean, I'd be glad to give him another chance. So far, Moulin Rouge, it didn't really hit with me. I'm sure we'll review it at some point, unfortunately. But this one, again, I can't really give it positives, give it negatives. It's right down the middle for me. So I'm going to tell you right now, my score for this is 2.5 out of 5. Right down the middle, because I can't weigh the positives and the negatives any more than the other. They right down the middle for me. All right.
I will say one negative before I give my score and stuff. And this is a weird negative because I was complimenting, like, I like William Shakespeare. I studied some in school and stuff, but I've never been like a big fan. I always have a weird theory that, now I appreciate what he did because he gave us stories that are the basis of what we see pretty much in everything, because he gives such basic stories like Romeo and Juliet, two lovers that shouldn't be together. How many times have we seen that in so many different things? So he gave us stories. But I always thought William Shakespeare was probably more like a pulp fiction type of playwright, and because his stuff just endured, so some people think, well, he's the greatest, you know. But for me, I think he actually wrote more soap opera type stuff.
Yeah.
And for this, it works. And I like this, but I also think that's a negative because Boz decides to, like, I'm friends with him, Boz. It's easier than trying to say Luhrmann all the time. What I like about what I think the problem is that because he stays so close to the source material, there's some limitations in a stage play that a movie would have. See, if he decided to, and I'm not saying he made the wrong decision. I actually like that he was daring enough, and I like that he got a generation of teen girls to go out and look up Shakespeare and stuff. And that's incredible. Like, to me, that's a positive. But the problem I have is with a stage play, you're basically telling the story, and he comes up with some great ways to flesh out what the stage play probably had, using stuff like the media or the gangsters. But unfortunately, that's also its problem, in my opinion, is because we don't get to know anything about these people except what they're feeling at that time. Yep. So we don't really get the rivalry of the gangsters except that we're told about it.
Yeah.
In fact, whenever the two fathers are on in the screens together, they don't seem like they're rivals. They're just dealing with what the current issue is.
There's one newspaper clipping that we see where they've reconciled and they're shaking each other's hands. That's the only time I can remember, and we just watched this, that they actually acknowledge each other's existence. They stand together, they sit together, but they never look at each other. They never speak to one another. It's just weird.
But what I did like about that aspect is you could tell the rivalry was in the younger generation.
Yeah.
Where the older was like, yeah, we don't do
all the
that.
underlings.
So there is, but I think the problem here is because we don't get to know the characters. You can feel from Leo's performance that when he loses a member of his family, a good friend, you feel that rage because we see it, but we don't feel it earlier because the script doesn't let us get to know that. So if he did decide to just adapt it with his own thing, we might have got that friendship more, and then we felt that more.
Maybe.
Same like when Romeo decides to do something really big at the end, and like his best friend's not even trying to talk him out of it because they're going by the script. But any good friend would say, are you really thinking you're doing the right thing here? And it is a bit of a stretch, some of the stuff that would work in a play back in the, you know, the earliest centuries to what would work now. Like, you know, Juliet takes a drug that puts her to sleep for 12 hours.
20, I think.
And we just leave her in the church with no one attending with 4,000 candles.
Yeah, I was concerned they're going to burn the church down.
See, that works in a stage play, but it's weird that her parents would like, yeah, just let her stay there. We'll figure out what to do. People think she's dead at this moment. She's not in a refrigeration unit. You would not put her in your candles. So stuff that works in a play doesn't work like this. And because he's stuck with the play so much, I think we lose something in the story.
Definitely.
And that's a big, big problem.
So I gave it 2.5 out of 5. What are you giving it?
I'm still going to be generous because I like the early Boz. But as I said, this is the lowest of them. And I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5.
That's a little generous.
Yeah, I was going to go 4. But rewatching this again, I did see a lot more problems in it. But you know what? If you're a Leo fan, I told you really need to see this movie because it is one of his best. But when it comes to Leo, maybe I'd like to see what some of his worst was, because we reviewed The Beach and he was pretty good in that still, even though the movie was crap. Maybe we'll have to see like Critters 3 or whatever he was in. Anyhow.
Oh my gosh. Well, anyways, what did you think about Romeo and Juliet? Have you seen it? Have you any thoughts on how it was filmed? Let us know down in the comments, and share this video with your friends as well. Maybe even pull up a loved one, sit them down, and watch it in honor of Valentine's Day. It is the season of love, so send us some love. Give us a like, subscribe. We always love having you here with us, so thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? I'm right here.